Okay, so this is chapter 7 of Wolf Girl 5, and it's called All Aboard. Pirate watched me gesture frantically at the ship, then wagged his tail and sped away. I could only hope he'd understood. We dashed after him, across what seemed like dangerously open ground. There didn't appear to be any soldiers on deck, though I couldn't help but remember those dark portholes. We arrived at the jetty, which ran alongside the entire length of the ship. Beside the jetty was a set of barnacle-covered stairs that led downwards and disappeared into the water. Pirate ran down to the bottom step and stood there wagging his tail. "He doesn't get it," groaned Rupert. Pirate barked at us, then took a running jump off the step and disappeared under the jetty. "Unless he does," I said. I followed him down. Under the jetty was a beam of wood that ran parallel with the ship. Pirate stood on it, wagging his tail. "Come on, ye land dwellers," he yapped. "This way." He started to walk along the beam. "He seems to know what he's doing," I said. "Unless he thinks we want barnacles for breakfast," said Rupert. The engines grew louder, churning the water to a frenzy. Suddenly, the ship was moving. Pirate yapped urgently. "Hurry!" I ran and jumped onto the beam. The briny wood creaked under my feet, but it seemed solid enough. "Come on, doggies!" One by one, the dogs jumped over to me, where I braced myself to steady them. Only Rupert dithered behind, glancing nervously from the water to the beam. "Rupert, what have you got to lose?" I called above the roaring engines. "Oh, you know," he answered as he begrudgingly positioned himself to leap. "Just my life, I suppose." He sprang across the water onto the beam and slam-hugged one of the jetty pylons. "Ugh," he said, and peeled himself off. We moved along the beam in single file while the boat continued to pick up speed. Waves sloshed the jetty, making the entire thing quake, and the beam creaked ever louder. Our footing seemed too uncertain to run, but Pirate was getting further ahead of us. "Hurry up," he barked. "There are sea snails overtaking you." Voices sounded overhead, making us all flinch. "My ears are freezing," someone said. "Do we really have to patrol the deck? There's no one out here but us." "Don't let the captain hear you whining," said someone else, "or he'll clip your frozen ears and crack them right off." I looked up and saw soldiers on the deck above. I held a finger to my lips. Soon enough, the ship would carry these soldiers by if we just stayed quiet. Then I noticed Tiny was having trouble. "Oh my gosh, he's going to sneeze," said Nosy. "This is all because you chased that stupid fox," growled Sunrise. "Hold it in, Tiny," I whispered frantically. The soldiers were now directly above us. "I hope I don't get seasick," said Whiner. "They don't feed us enough to lose my lunch over the side." "Just don't splatter my boots," said Ponytail, "or you'll be polishing them between every meal." Tiny's cheeks puffed out as he struggled to stifle his sneeze. His eyes bulged. He opened his little mouth and... Achoo! Tiny's sneeze was so little it would not have blown a fly, of course. The soldiers above heard nothing. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. "Look at that," said Ponytail, pointing to the sky. "That eagle seems to be following us." "A sign of good luck," said Whiner. Their voices faded away as they continued their patrol. Meanwhile, I could see the back of the ship catching up to us. Ahead, Pirate paced back and forth, anxiously pointing his paw at something in the side of the ship. Whatever it was would soon be beyond us if we didn't hurry. I scooped Tiny up and began to ran I scooped Tiny up and began to run along the treacherous beam, praying the others were staying close behind. I reached Pirate and looked where he was pointing. One of the portholes was broken. I couldn't see what was beyond, but it was a way onto the ship. Pirate took a little run up and sprang for the window. He sailed right through and disappeared. I heard no sound of him landing. I glanced around and found Sunrise just behind me. "You can make it, right, Sunrise?" I said. "Of course," she said, "but you'll follow, yes? Don't leave me alone on that floating house thing with the silly pug." "I promise." Sunrise got down on her haunches, sized up her target, and leapt. She passed straight through the window, and I heard a crash from beyond. There was no time to worry about whether she had raised any alarm. "Follow, everyone," I said. The ship was beginning to turn, the window growing more distant by the second. "Quick, Rupert," I said. Rupert jumped with limbs flailing wildly. He landed half inside the ship, his stomach slamming down on the porthole rim, and I winced. For a moment he lay there, groaning softly. "Hurry up, Rupert," I urged. With a grunt, he managed to pull himself in. His legs disappeared, and I heard the thump of him hitting the ground. Luckily, he appeared back at the window, grimacing in pain, but ready. I tossed Tiny over to him. That left only Brutus, who kept glancing nervously at the choppy water beneath. "It's okay, boy," I said. "What if I fall? Will you leave me behind?" "You won't fall. This is just like jumping from rock to rock. You've made longer leaps than this 100 times. Brutus whined, and I thought he was going to refuse. But he summoned his courage and launched from the beam. The weight of him pushing off made the wood shudder underfoot, and I heard the pop, pop, pop of nails coming loose. Suddenly my footing was falling away. I wrapped my arms around a pylon. It was rough and slippery, but I managed to hold on. I worked my way around it till my back was to the porthole. I would have to push off backwards without being able to see what I was aiming at. "I'll catch you," called Rupert. Wah! The horn vibrated everything, including my eardrums and the pylon. My fingers began to slip. I gave a mighty bellow, masked by the horn, half fear and half determination, and somersaulted backwards. For a sickening moment I was completely disoriented, flying through the air as the blaring horn shattered all sense of direction. I thumped against the ship and slid downwards, the water rushing up towards me, and then Rupert's arms hooked under my own. Rupert collapsed backwards, using his weight to pull me through the porthole. We sprawled to the floor and knocked something over with a loud bang that surely must have been heard by someone. I looked around wildly, but couldn't see anything in the dark in order to know where to hide. I held my breath, waiting for a door to burst open and soldiers to rush in. But it seemed that no one had heard us after all. Around us was the thrum, thrum, thrum of mechanical things working away, the rumbling engines of the ship. Maybe that had masked all the racket. I looked up through the porthole and saw the distant speck of Eagle flying high in the sky. My eyes began to adjust to our surroundings. And that's the end of that chapter. The next chapter is called Stowaways.